So if you've clicked on this, you're obviously looking at doing a gallery of sorts, or you're interested in doing a gallery. So for that, congratulations, because that in itself is no small feat. Now, before I get into this, I want to give you a bit of context. I've been fortunate enough, I've done 4 galleries in the last 18 months. First one being the Vietnam book launch, which was done by a student-run gallery in the middle of Perth City. The second one was a gallery I did on a walk, which was the Cape to Cape in WA Southwest. I did a photo gallery on that, which was inside a cafe within Scarborough Beach, which is along the coast here in WA. The third one I did was probably the biggest one I did, which was actually at an art gallery space here in Mosman Park, which is a beautiful gallery run by incredible people. And the last one I did was in a very similar setting as well. So the reason I'm making this is because I wish I had it. When I started out, my first exhibition was vastly different to my second. My second exhibition was vastly different to my third, and then that again was different to my last. So I wanted to make this because I wanted to give you, someone who wants to make a gallery, I want to give you the best opportunity to create the best experience for yourself. Now, the first thing I want to do is, I want to clarify something. If you're making a gallery, your purpose should not be just to sell your work. Now, that sounds counterintuitive because a lot of people do galleries to sell work. But for me, I think it's a great way of getting your name out there, showing people what you can do, showing the skills you have. And that doesn't necessarily translate to sales initially. I think in time it does. But initially, your reason to do that is to showcase the thing you love to do has to be greater than the fact that I want to sell my work. You can be left feeling quite disheartened at the end of it if you don't get those sales. Because I've been there. I've finished a gallery and sold 1 piece throughout the night. But it didn't mean the gallery wasn't a success. It was just my measurement of success was not aligned with why I'd started it. But on the night, you kind of go, oh, did you buy, like, only 1 person purchase something or 2 people buy something? Doesn't mean it's not a success. It just means that it may not be the right audience. It may take time. Some pieces that you do may need to be looked at, see if they'll fit in homes, to see if people actually truly resonate to them and come back and want to see them again. So to stop me rambling on about it, because I can, let's get into some things that I wish I knew when I did my first gallery. Okay, first things first, you need to have a story that you're trying to tell. I go to a lot of galleries and a lot of them have incredible work that are very individual pieces that don't have a collective theme across the board. Because the more that theme is not there throughout the work, the more disconnected the people can be because they can see the individual pieces, regardless of how incredible they could be. You're in charge of creating a journey for the people who are going in to see this. And that comes with storyline. Now, that has to be the first thing before you even consider doing a gallery. Do I have a strong enough overall story that I'm trying to tell the viewer and the people who see my work that they'll get something more than just these are beautiful pieces out of it? While there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, I think you're just going to create a much better experience for the viewer by creating a story, a narrative, just a journey for them to go on, because they'll leave with something they didn't expect to get, which is a complete emotional connection to you, the artist, and your work. I'll give you an example of an exhibition I went to that completely changed how I looked at setting up a gallery. It was an incredible artist here in WA called Hayley Welsh, who's done pieces all over the world and huge murals. But I went to her exhibition, and not only was it an incredible exhibition that was very well put together and beautifully displayed, there was one element that completely blew my mind, which was one of her pieces was painted on a jigsaw, and the middle piece was missing, which was a bit odd until you saw there was a huge hut in the middle of the room. Now, within that hut, there was an incredible written piece that kind of summarized the gallery in itself, and then on the back of the hut contained a little frame with this piece, because the hut was the missing piece. When I saw that, it completely blew my mind, and it just completely changed how I set up. I saw that in between my second and my third exhibition that I did, and it completely changed how I looked at it, how I set it up, how I thought about it. Because I walked out, I was just completely in awe of how much someone was able to grab your attention and someone was able to draw you in and completely take you on this journey and show so much of them within their work. Now, incredibly, every single one of Hayley's pieces on that exhibition were sold. And you can completely see why if you look up her work, which I'll drop a link here below. But if you look up her work, you can see how incredible it is, how emotive it is. Now you imagine when that's well curated and you've completely curated this experience for the viewer when they go and see this exhibition. It took it to another level. All right, you've got your most important element. You've got your story. You've got your pieces together. Now you need to think of where you're going to do it. And when it comes to hosting a gallery, it's very much like real estate. It's location, location, location. And I say that in a joking manner, but it is, because the work you display and the people you attract are going to be heavily based on the location in which you do it. So if you're doing it like myself, where you've done exhibitions, I've done exhibitions in cafes, for example, and the exhibitions went incredible and the spaces were beautiful, but they don't necessarily attract an art buying audience. So if you've got pieces there that are thousands of dollars, they could be completely misaligned to what people are willing to buy if they were to go and look at the work there. Whereas if you were to have the same pieces in an art gallery, it can be a very different outcome for the person who's going to see them, because they're going in with that intention. Having that idea of where you can see your pieces ending up is a great way of thinking of where you want to do it. Now, I know it's hard to get into some art galleries, but there is beautiful spaces in very nice areas that can be done very, very well, that can completely add to the viewer's experience of going to see your exhibition. So when it comes to location, really consider what you want the viewer to get out of it and what kind of people you want to attract. Do you want heavy foot traffic on the nights where it's not an opening night? Is it in a business district which is closed after hours? Is it in an area that's very busy? Like, is it in the middle of a city center? Is it in a suburban area? These are all considerations that should come into it when you're really trying to work out where you're going to show you. Because I had it on my third exhibition, which was in a beautiful gallery here in Perth called Gallows Gallery. And I just happened to have it on a week where we had 6 40-degree Celsius days in a row. So my walking and foot traffic was very, very low in a very, very nice area, but it was very low because of the heat. There wasn't many people out. It was very unfortunate time that fell within the week of my exhibition, but it was something that I hadn't considered when I'd done the space in regards to opening hours. I could have opened more in the morning rather than during the hottest part of the day. I could have opened slightly later because people were often out in the evening. All of these things factor into the location and where you choose and when you choose to do it. So my next bit of advice is, you've got your pieces, you've got your place. How do you display them is very, very important for the viewer when they arrive on the night. Do you have a lot of pieces where the walls are inundated with your work? That can work for some artists. Or do you have very few, maybe some big pieces, some small pieces, that can create a lot more space for people to sit within one piece? Because one thing I wish I did on some of my previous exhibitions was I wish I had a variety of sizes. Because there's people who come who want to support you but don't necessarily want to buy the biggest, the top end piece you have. So having smaller pieces are a great way of letting the people who want to come and support you, and then having the bigger pieces there that you want to do can be a great way of adding to that narrative without necessarily just doing everything for the fact of getting sales. Because it still has to come down to the story you're telling and the narrative you're trying to get across the person as they walk through that space. Lastly, I want to come down to what your opening night can do. Because small tips about it in relation to, you've got your work up, you've got your story, you're creating an experience for the viewer. You are curating a storyline for the viewer to go through. Now, a couple of things are very important with that. One, music. Music is so important because it completely changes the room and the environment for the people. Like, good, beautifully curated music can add to an evening, and then also, if you get it wrong, it can completely detract from someone's experience. So one thing I learned was when you go into a gallery, a lot of them will have more classical, softer music that's more in the background. I had one of my friends play violin and it was incredible. A lot of people commented on how great that added to the event that it was on. Because it didn't take away from it, but added almost like a beautiful soft background music that kind of brought the pieces to another level just because they could hear that while they were engaged in the pieces. Another thing people don't really consider is food. On the night, a lot of people go to exhibitions, particularly here in Australia, where they go and they expect food. And there's getting a fine balance between having little snacks, little nibbles for people to take and walk with them. Such sushi is great, for example, and then having too much food where people only go there to eat and don't actually engage with the artwork. So it's a very fine balance to get, and one that takes a little bit of time, because my first exhibition, I definitely had too much emphasis on food and drink, and the last one was a lot more balanced, where people were able to get a little bit of food, but they didn't spend any longer than that time with the food, and the rest of the time was in the space looking at the pieces. So immediately you're creating something that they can go and have a little bit of food so they're not hungry, they get a little bit more of an experience, but then they're completely focused on the pieces that are in front of them. Lastly, you've done all of the work, you've got your location, you've created your storyline, you have got your pieces on the wall, you've got your music, you've got your food, you've got it in a beautiful space. The last one, which is the hardest one to do and the one I cannot emphasize enough, enjoy it. It's not very often where you get a lot of people you know and a lot of people you don't know in a room just looking at something that you're extremely passionate about and something you love to make. So it's something I really struggled with the first 2 or 3 exhibitions, because I'm really focused on ensuring people are fed, people have got drinks, people are enjoying the space, people are getting stuff from the artwork, that you're trying to mingle with everyone, but you're not actually enjoying what's in front of you, which is you've got everybody in a room and it's just to look at the thing you have put together. You are basically a storyteller for the people who were in that room at that moment. And I cannot emphasize how much that is such an important part of why you do exhibitions. Because you're doing it to tell stories, and you're doing it because you're trying to create a journey for people to go on and you to take people on. So even if it's just a moment, take a step back and just look and see what's in front of you and see the people who are there just to see what you have made. Because it's a beautiful thing when you realize that you've been able to do something like this, and to be grateful for what's in front of you is such an important thing to take away from doing an exhibition.